So welcome back. This is our Luna knit along, and this is the part we're finishing up. We are going to be seaming up that sleeve. The sleeve is a little bit different because you have ribbing, you have stockinette, which are both seamed basically the same way, and then you have the garter stitch section. So we will be looking at how to seam those three different kinds of stitches, and then we will just apply the rest of that seaming of the garter stitch to the body of our garment, and then we'll be ready to weave in the ends and talk about how we're going to pick up around the neckline. So let's get started seaming that sleeve. All right, so this is our sleeve. And the first thing I like to do is to block it. So believe it or not, I actually have blocked this, but the stretchier the yarn, the greater the curl. So even though I blocked my sleeve, it's still curling in a little bit. And even without the curl, I think it's a good idea to go ahead and clip your fabric together. But with the curl, it's an absolute necessity. So I love these little Stockinette clips. I use them to clip my fabric together. So I'm going to start here just above the cuff, and then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to clip it together right where the garter stitch section begins. And then I'm going to clip in the middle, right here. And I'm going to clip in the middle of that. Okie dokie. So now we're ready to begin seaming. And you'll see that we have some tails where we joined yarn at the beginning of the row. And as tempting as it is to use those tails to seam, I want to encourage you to use a fresh piece of yarn. The reason is that if you're seaming along and you don't like your seam, it's super easy to just grab one side and pull it out. Whereas if you have used a piece of yarn that's integral to your fabric, you can't very well pull that out, can you? So just as a good habit is to use a fresh piece of yarn, and you're going to need a piece of yarn that's about as twice as long as the length of the seam you're going to be making. So I am just going to use this. Now, another thing to sort of think about is the strength of your yarn. We're going to be putting a lot of tension on this yarn as we zip it up as we go. So you want to make sure it's nice and strong. We are lucky that this yarn, the Rowan Four Seasons cotton, is strong enough. If I were using a different yarn, like maybe Rowan Felted Tweed, I would not use that yarn to seam. I would use a different yarn, and I would use something in a strong, smooth color that is similar to what we have in our fabric. Although you're not going to see the seam at all, so even if you used a different color, it wouldn't matter at all. So let me get my needle and we'll get started. So we're going to start here at the bottom, and I am going to bring my fresh seaming yarn up from back to front, kind of through this corner here. You see that? And then I'm going to come over to the other side, and I'm going to come back to front through the corner here. So I've got back to front and back to front, and now I'm going to come up back to front one more time. And this is what you call a figure eight. See how that's sort of twisted through, and it makes the join at the bottom really nice and tidy. So now we are going to come up through the bar at the very bottom here. Let me just show you how nice and tidy that makes this join. So it makes a nice even little join here. Now we're taking the bars that live between the selvage stitch and the first column of stitches. So I'm coming up under this bar. Now we're taking our one bar, our one bar. We're really just moving back and forth. So this is called mattress stitch. And we're moving back and forth from one side to the other, taking one bar on each side. Got a lot of tails here. I've got the tail for my yarn. I've got the tail for my cast on. Let's get you out of there. Okay. All right, so let's zip that up and have a look. So I'm pretty happy with that edge. So we'll just continue this all the way up, taking one bar on each side as we go. As I said, I knit this ribbing pretty tight. I always knit my ribbing on a needle 2 sizes smaller, so it is a little tight as I go. The other thing you will notice is that as we seam, we are either twisting or untwisting our seaming yarn. And that's not anything that you're doing wrong. It's just the way that the motion makes the yarn rotate. And in this instance, the motion is making my plied yarn my S twist yarn come unplied. So every so often I have to go back and let it sort of retwist. So here I am at the top of my ribbing and I'm ready to move on to the stockinette portion of this sleeve. And it's done exactly the same way. We're just going through the one side, under the bar, picking that bar up, and then back to the other side. You look, we're going into the spot exactly where the yarn came out. So my yarn from last time is here. I'm going right into that same spot and up under the next bar. And about every inch or so, I like to go ahead and zip that fabric up and just make sure I like the look of my seam. And I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm just going to continue all the way up. If I get off, or it looks like I'm getting off, I'm always going to just adjust my clip, and you can sort of tell where you are and that you're even if your decrease points match up. So you can look and see I have a decrease here and an increase. I have an increase here and an increase here, and I know that my fabric is matched up. So make sure that we're good there. All right, so I'm just going to continue all the way up here to my garter stitch section, and I will see you then. All right, so here I am now at the beginning of my garter stitch section. As I said, seaming stockinette is really easy, but I think a lot of times people get confused with seaming garter stitch. So let's have a look at this close up. Remember that with the seaming the stockinette, we're going under one bar. And we're doing the same when we seam garter stitch. So we're going under one bar on this side closest to me. And then we're going to go over one bar over here. But the thing about garter stitch is that every other row, the bar is on top. So we're going to take this bar up here. And then we'll do the same here. Take this bar that's on top. And then we'll dig for this bar that's between the two knit stitches. Dig for the bar between the two knit stitches. And then here we have purl stitches again. So we'll take that bar that lies on top. I call this digging, right? We're digging for that bar on the knit side in the knit stitches. And then we're taking the smile. See how my yarn is beginning to become very unraveled here? It's kind of a mess, but it is still nice and strong. So when we zip this up, come on now. We have a nice clean garter stitch join. So I'll just continue working this seaming garter stitch. Remember that with the garter stitch, we are going under the bar, just like we did in stockinette, going under the bar, but on every other row, the bar that we want to go under is on top. It's this smile that runs between the two purl stitches. See this smile? We're going to pick up the smile on the purl rows, and then on the knit rows, we're going to dig for that bar. And this is exactly the way that we're going to do it when we seam up the sides of our sweater. Let's give it a zip. And you see what a nice, neat garter stitch seam we have there.